From Orlando, Florida and Tulsa, Oklahoma, welcome to the 1330 Podcast with your hosts, Brent-Bailey and Keith-Nachbor. Pulling from nearly half a century of experience, Brent and Keith share unique wisdom and proven insight to build the leader within you. The 1330 Podcast starts right now.
Welcome, everybody, to the very first 1330 Podcast. I'm Brent-Bailey.
And I am Keith-Nachbor.
And we are just so thrilled, elated, as it were, for you to be joining us and for us to have been downloaded to your phone, your iPod, or your tablet device, wherever you're listening to us right now. Thank you so much for hitting that download button. We hope you enjoy what we're getting ready to do today. Keith and I have been talking about doing something together, again, for years. We worked together for about 11 and a half years, and we did youth ministry together and just had a great time, and we've been trying to figure out a way to put the band back together.
That's right. And we're back, baby.
And so we've looked at several options, and it felt like this was the good first step, was the podcast. And so here we are. We're here, and we're going to be talking about a plethora of different things.
Nice word, Brent.
Well, you know, I'm a wordsmith sometimes.
Pulled out the thesaurus.
And so we're going to be doing several of these. We're going to try and get several to you a month, talking about leadership. We're talking about things in the church, talking about youth ministry. We're going to talk about business.
Music ministry.
We're going to talk about
band.
We're going to talk about just developing people.
Yes.
And being a leader that you want to be and the people that follow you want to be.
Yes.
That want you to be, as it were. So we're going to jump right into the deep end of the pool today, because every one of these podcasts are going to be 13 minutes and 30 seconds of solid content. That's the reason for the name. So we're talking today, a big subject to start the show with. We're talking about motivation. And Keith, why don't you just tell us, how do you motivate yourself?
How do I motivate myself, Brent? Primarily, I motivate myself through vision. And the vision that God has placed within my heart. And the vision that God has placed within my heart is to help other people. It's kind of a broad, big, wide, vision for that part of it, because it can go so many different ways. But that's what I appreciate about God, is that He's really placed a big vision within me to help other people. And in life, we all have the opportunity to stand on somebody else's shoulders, where they've done something for us that has raised us up so that we can see farther, so that we can see more, we can do more, and it expands the horizon of our lives. And through this podcast, that's what I want to be able to do, is to allow somebody to stand on our shoulders, so that we're able to come in and allow them to see farther and broaden their vision. And for me, that's a real big motivating factor in this. As we've been preparing for this and thinking about these, I lay awake at night in bed thinking about this stuff, because I'm really excited to be able to have the opportunity to speak into these people's lives,
right?
And really help them to motivate themselves. So if you're going to motivate yourself, you're going to have vision.
Yeah.
The Bible tells us that we perish without, people perish because of no vision. And if you don't have vision, then you're perishing. And right now, my vision that I have for me right now, my main focus right now is doing these podcasts. And that's my motivating factor right now. That's what's got me excited. And when I'm excited, then you're going to be excited about it.
Yeah.
We're doing this together.
And those of listening.
Absolutely. Yes. So that's where I come back and I look at it and say, well, if it's going to, if I'm going to motivate myself, what is it that's motivating me? We've got to come back and you've got to ask yourself that same question. What is it that's motivating me? What do I think about?
Where do you get excited? What gets you excited? What gets you, because there's so many times people are doing things and they look at everything they're doing in life as a job. And a job and a purpose is not the same thing. That's kind of a big nugget there, but
right.
But you can't look at your calling and your purpose in life as a job, because it's hard to get motivated for a job. I mean, what motivates you for your job is your paycheck.
Yep.
But there's so much more to life than your paycheck. And so you really, in order to become the kind of leader that God's called you to be, you're going to have to look at really what excites you. And I'm not just talking about being giddy like a school kid running around. I'm going to see Mickey
Mouse. It's more like
Mouse.
a drive. What is it that's driving you?
What is it that when you think about that one thing, your heart beats a little bit faster and you get that anticipation feeling.
Yeah.
And the song starts playing in your head. Anticipation.
We promise there won't be any more singing.
So where is it? So I think that's probably the first thing when we're talking about Motivation Day is identify where your passion lies.
Yes. And if you're going to identify that passion, you can have passion outside of whatever your job is, whatever your, if it's ministry or whether it's a secular position, whatever it may be. You've got to be motivated in multiple areas of your life.
Yeah.
And we've got to be well-rounded people. So you need to have a passion for your family. So you've got to have a vision for your family. You've got to have a vision for other relationships, your friendships. You've got to have a vision for that relationship that you have with the Lord. Because all of these things, to me, combine together to make your life fuller, to make it better.
Well, it makes your life what you want it to be.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. And that's where we come back. When we look at these things, I believe that you need to sit down, write these things down and say, what are the things that really excite me? What are the things that when I think about it, my heart races just a little bit more?
Yeah.
And that's where we go. And that's where we're able to get other people to follow us. And that's what that's part of being a leader with all this. You have to have other people that are following you, that are excited about what God has placed within your heart, especially if you're a leader. You have to have vision. You have to have an excitement. I know when we did youth ministry, it was always really easy to get people excited about what we were doing because we were passionate about it ourselves. And so if you're short on volunteers or you're short on help in your business, are you really displaying enthusiasm for what you're doing?
Yeah. And it would have to come back to you see it. And if you don't, you need to take some time to do that. And that means how do people get to that point? I mean, how do you get to the point where you can start seeing that and start identifying that? If you're sitting there listening to us right now and you're like, well, that's great. I don't see anything else. I'm just doing what I know to do. Okay, well, what caused you to do that? Because that's the seeing part that we're talking about. And if you're not seeing anything, you're just following orders, you need to take some time and just stop and maybe start. This is a horrible word to say when people are working, but you need to take some time to daydream and get that inside of you. Where do I want to go? What is it that I want to do? Yep. How do I want my organization to be?
Yeah. I believe that some of the greatest ideas that we ever had together stemmed from us just sitting around thinking out loud.
Yeah. Yeah, when we worked together as youth pastors at the same church, was the greatest 11 years, some of the greatest 11 years of my life.
Yes.
We officed right next door to each other, and in fact, our office shared a common door. And because Keith was the senior man at the job,
well,
I mean,
yeah.
he had been there a lot longer than me. His office had a couch, and my office only had a love seat. So
that sounds great.
so I had to go in there. You know what I mean, love seat, like a little small couch, a little short couch. And but I'd go in Keith's office, and he would sit back in his chair, and he'd put his feet up on the desk, and I'd lay down on the couch, and we'd just start throwing things out, just literally daydreaming of what the next event we were going to do was going to look like.
And Brent, we had some terrible ideas.
Absolutely. But in those daydreamings, there is no such thing as a bad idea.
That's right. But out of those terrible ideas and out of that daydreaming and just speaking out loud and just bouncing ideas off one another, we had some of the best ideas that I think had come out of the youth ministry there in a long, long time.
And the thing that most people will struggle with here is that you're telling them to stop buzzing around like bees.
Yep.
and literally take a minute or an hour.
Yep.
And start to really daydream. Not just about playing and not just about something stupid or just some tomfoolery or daydreaming about, playing golf, but daydreaming about the purpose that your organization is trying to accomplish.
Right. Yeah, it's not about just retiring.
Right.
We all want to, live at the beach or wherever your dream place is. We all want that. But what is it, again, we're coming back to that motivating factor for us. What is it that really gets us revved up to start doing something that's going to make a difference in somebody else's life? Not just our own, but somebody else's life. And again, the best ideas that I've had and the best vision and the strongest vision that I've had in my life have all come from those times of reflection, of meditation, and just deep thought and prayer as I'm thinking about life and what God has called me to do and where He's called me to do this at. And this is, I know it's, it sounds crazy, like you said, we're asking you just to kind of slow things down a little bit, but look what Jesus did.
Yeah, he'd get away all the time.
All the time. And he taught that to his disciples as well, we need to go away. Well, where are we going away to? Well, we're going away to pray. When did Jesus do his most powerful miracles? After he came back from praying and getting away from everything.
And see, you bring up something really powerful there, because there's so many, right now there's pastors listening to us as well as there are business people and things like that. And pastors, listen, when you go to pray, and listen, I pastor now. I pastor a church in Orlando, Florida, and I understand the crunch that is behind praying. But sometimes your praying doesn't always have to be, God, help our finances. God, please bring people to the church. God, do this. God, do that. Sometimes you need to go in your prayer time and shut up.
Yep.
And just let that vision percolate, if you will. Like coffee
let God
in the morning.
Speak to your heart and just let Him show you how big the plan that He has for you is.
Yeah. When we would do some of these daydreaming sessions that we're talking about, we'd pray for a few minutes.
Yep.
And literally just stop and just worship for a few minutes and just sit there and let that just start to bubble. And then you get that one little inkling, that one little leading, and man, it was on. Then it was like build on that.
Yep.
And we would just be off and running.
And that's where it all starts, is with that one thing. And again, I'm going to kind of bring this back around here as we're getting ready to wrap up, that if you want to have people in your organization following you, you've got to give them a reason to follow you. And you've got to give them a strong reason to follow you, because there's a lot of people out there to follow. There's a lot of churches to go to. There's a lot of places to work. But if you give them a good reason to follow you, they'll follow you to the end of the earth.
Every time.
Yeah, all the time. And that's what we're looking for here is that if you're motivated, then it's going to be easy for you to motivate others. It's going to be easier for you to get people to follow you. It's going to get easier for people to hook up with the vision that you have for your church or your business, and really go out and make an impact on this earth.
So in review today, just take some time to daydream and let God speak to your heart so that you can get a clear picture of where you need to go. Well, all of our time has actually left us right now. So that's the first 1330 podcast. We'll see you next time. I'm Brent Bailey.
I'm Keith-Nachbor. You can reach us at 1330podcast@gmail.com.
Thanks for joining us for the 1330 podcast with Brent and Keith. Join us next time for another 13 minutes and 30 seconds geared to change you into the leader you and those who follow you want you to be.